Episode 1, The Call That Changed Everything. It was just past 7:00 a.m. when the call came through. I remember because I had just taken my first sip of black coffee, bitter and slightly burnt like always. The screen flashed an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Is this Mr. David Miller?" "Speaking. This is St. Vincent Medical Center. Your daughter Lily Miller has been admitted to the emergency department." That was all it took. One sentence. My entire world shifted on its axis. "I'm David Miller, 52 years old, born and raised in Colorado Springs. I've been working construction since I was 19, climbed the ranks from laborer to supervisor over 3 decades. These hands, they've built schools, roads, bridges. But nothing I've ever built was more important to me than my family, especially my daughter Lily. She's 22 now, pre-law, smart as hell, the kind of girl who laughs with her whole face. Her mom Claire and I have been married 26 years. Or we were. Back then, I still thought I had a wife. The morning that call came, I was running on muscle memory. Tossed on my jacket, grabbed the keys to my truck, and left my half-eaten breakfast cold on the plate. The drive to the hospital a blur of red lights and clenched fists. Walking into the ER was like entering another reality. That sterile, overlit chaos, nurses moving fast but controlled families, sobbing in corners, the sharp tang of antiseptic in the air. A nurse met me at the entrance, led me through a maze of curtains, and there she was. Lily, face swollen, bruises blooming across her cheek like dark flowers. Her lip was split, right eye barely open. "Dad," she whispered. I held her hand. "I'm here. You're safe now. Tell me what happened." She broke down then. Between sobs, she told me the pieces. Came home early from a sleepover. Heard sounds upstairs. Thought we were being robbed until she realized the noises were coming from the bedroom. Our bedroom. I opened the door, and it was Mom, she choked out. With Uncle Stephen. Stephen, Clara's cousin. Always a little too smooth, a little too smug. Ran some shady business out of Chicago, the kind of guy who wore $3,000 suits but never said exactly what he did. I'd never trusted him. Turns out I should have trusted my gut. Lily said she screamed. That's when the goons came in. Guys Stephen kept around supposedly for protection. They weren't there to protect anyone. They dragged her down the stairs and threw her like she was trash. She'd been unconscious for a few minutes before a neighbor heard the noise and called 911. I remember standing there beside her hospital bed, her hand trembling in mine and thinking, this didn't just cross a line. This incinerated it. "Did the doctors check you out?" I asked. She nodded, eyes still glossy. "They're doing x-rays. I think something's wrong with my wrist." I kissed her forehead and stood up. "I'll be back, I promise." "Dad." Her grip tightened around my hand. "Don't do anything dumb." I didn't answer. I just gave her a look, the kind she'd seen in me once before, when I pulled her out of a wrecked car when she was 15. Calm, clear, cold. That's when I walked out and headed straight to the nurse's station. I need every record. Scans, reports, photos of the bruises. Everything I said. That's not standard. "Make it happen," I cut her off, eyes locked in. This wasn't some accident. This was an attack. She hesitated, then slowly nodded. Back in the truck, I sat with my hands on the wheel, heart thudding in my chest. 26 years of marriage. All the holidays, the vacations, the nights I worked late so we could pay off the mortgage early for what? Stephen had always been a parasite, but Clara, she was my partner, or so I thought. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal layered with violence, and it had hurt the one person I'd vowed to protect above all else. Lily didn't just find her mother cheating, she got beaten for walking in on it. And now I was going to find out how deep this went. I pulled out a phone I hadn't touched in years. A line I kept for emergencies only. "Marcus." "Yeah, it's Dave. I'm calling in that favor. I need eyes on Stephen Hale's business. Every asset, every shell company, every offshore trick. I need it fast." The silence on the other end told me Marcus understood this wasn't casual. Then I sat in the cab, stared out over the highway, and let the fury settle. This wasn't going to be a shouting match or some messy divorce. This was going to be precise, relentless, unforgiving. They hurt my daughter, they made a mistake. They just didn't know it yet. Episode 2. A Father's Rage Awakens. The roads were mostly empty that morning, just the hum of the engine and the silence building around me. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not yet. The thought of walking back into that house, my house, knowing what had happened there, made my skin crawl. I stopped instead at the overlook above Palmer Lake. It's where I used to take Lily when she was little, back when everything felt simpler. Back when I believed loyalty meant something. I parked the truck, stepped out, and just stood there watching the sun edge over the hills. Clara, Stephen, two people who shared my table, my life, my trust. They didn't just betray me, they did it under my roof. With bodyguards, with violence. And now my daughter was lying in a hospital bed because they got caught. It wasn't just personal anymore. This was war. I'm not a hothead, never have been. I don't scream or slam doors. When things go wrong, I fall back on structured discipline. The Navy taught me that. 10 years in from age 18 to 28. By the time I was out, I'd seen enough chaos to know emotion gets you killed. Strategy gets results. So I started with information. I called Marcus again. Find out who the muscle was at the house. The guys who roughed up Lily. I want names, records, and photos. I want to know who they worked for before and who signs their checks now. I'm on it, he said. Give me a few hours. Start with any Chicago ties. I have a hunch this isn't just personal. He didn't argue. I hung up and stared out at the lake mine racing. My phone buzzed again, unknown number. I answered expecting a cop or a hospital callback. It was Clara. Her voice soft and shaky, barely above a whisper. David, please, I can explain. I didn't say anything. She kept going. It wasn't what it looked like. We didn't mean to. You didn't mean to, what I said, voice level. Get caught, leave our daughter broken on the stairs. I didn't know Stephen's guys would hurt her, she whispered. You brought them into our home. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I told them to get out. But you didn't stop them. You didn't call 911. You didn't even ride in the ambulance with her, did you? Silence. Then a pathetic no. I hung up. I drove to a small industrial building I knew well, the company I'd supervised for the last 15 years, Miller & Sons Construction. My name was on the trucks, but not the ownership papers. I never cared for titles. I liked being the guy who kept things running. Practical, efficient. The office was dark, but the back shop was open. Marcus was already there. Laptop out, coffee brewing, scanning through documents like a man possessed. They're not just bodyguards, he said as I walked in. One's ex-private security. The other has a sealed juvenile record that smells like mob activity. Guess where they were 2 weeks ago, working nightclub security in Chicago. On Stephen's payroll. Organized, looks like, and Stephen, he's not just a business consultant like he tells everyone. He's running a shell company web out of Illinois, laundering money through fake real estate deals. And Clara, Marcus hesitated. I stepped closer. What about her? She's been transferring money into joint accounts linked to Stephen's firms. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones. Over the last 6 months, over $420,000 spread across 6 banks. Some of it from your retirement fund, Dave. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Then I pulled out a notepad, old habit. I drew 3 columns. Clara, Stephen, associates. Beneath each, I started listing names, connections, assets, and timelines. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was financial sabotage, conspiracy, and they were ready to torch my life for a few million and a lie. She was going to leave you, Marcus said. Once the money was moved and the divorce papers filed, you'd be bankrupt. They were setting you up to take the fall. I clenched the pen in my hand until it cracked. Get me everything, I told him. Hard drives, records, copies. I want to know what they eat, where they sleep, who they owe money to. Marcus nodded. I looked up at the wall clock, 11:17 a.m. Not even 5 hours had passed since I got that call. And already everything I thought I knew about my life was gone. Clara didn't just betray me, she planned it. She hollowed out our marriage, siphoned away our future, and helped Stephen leave my daughter bleeding on the stairs, all while I was making coffee in the kitchen. They wanted me to break, wanted me confused, scrambling, but they forgot who I was. I've built bridges across rivers, raised houses from raw earth, repaired entire roads on a deadline with half a crew and no budget. You think I can't dismantle a couple of liars with delusions of grandeur? They wanted war. They just got it. Episode 3, The Brutal Confrontation. By the time I pulled onto our street, the afternoon light had already started to dim. Long shadows fell across the sidewalks. Kids were riding bikes. Neighbors were raking leaves like it was just another normal day. But I wasn't walking into normal. I slowed the truck and parked a block away. I didn't want to tip them off, My gut told me this wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. Two black SUVs sat in my driveway. Tinted windows, shiny rims, out of place in a working-class neighborhood like ours. But I knew what they meant. Stephen wasn't just hiding anymore. He was staking territory. My territory. I got out, shut the door quietly, and walked up the sidewalk like I belonged there. Which I did, more than any of them ever would. The front door was open. Music spilled out loud and careless, some bass-heavy garbage that shook the floorboards. I stepped around the back and entered through the side door, the one that led into the mudroom. The hinges creaked, I winced, but the music drowned it out. The moment I stepped into the house, I knew it wasn't mine anymore. Cigarette smoke hung in the air. Clara and I never smoked. Beer bottles on the counter. Someone had put their feet on my coffee table, scuff marks on the edge I spent hours sanding just right. Then I heard the laughter. Male voices, one deep and mocking. "Stephen, you should have seen his face last Thanksgiving," he said. Still trying to carve turkey like nothing was wrong. Laughter. Clara's voice chimed in slurry and too loud. "He always made the same routine: eggs at 6, the news by 6:30. Predictable as hell." I froze just inside the kitchen. Her words hit harder than any punch. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't shame. They were mocking me. Years of trust, loyalty, shared holidays reduced to a punchline. I stepped through the archway, and the room went dead silent. Clara sat on the couch, drink in hand, her blouse half undone. Stephen beside her, smug smile disappearing fast. The two thugs stood near the window suits, too tight over bulky frames, holding cheap beers like they were at a frat party. "Get out," I said. Calm, measured, but final. Stephen blinked. Well, the man of the house returns. "You've got 5 seconds. One of the bodyguards moved first, the younger one. Tall, cocky, thinking I was bluffing. He stepped toward me, hand twitching near his waistband. Big mistake. My first punch crushed his windpipe before he could blink. His hands shot to his throat, gasping. I followed with a knee to his solar plexus. He collapsed like a sack of bricks. The second one fumbled for something under his jacket. I grabbed his wrist, twisted it until the bones snapped. His scream was high and fast, desperate. I slammed his head into the wall. Once. Twice. He dropped. 15 seconds, 2 threats down. Stephen backed away, dragging Clara with him. "Let's be reasonable, Dave. Like your guys were reasonable with Lily." I stepped forward. Clara tried to speak, her voice cracking. "She wasn't supposed to." I backhanded her. Not out of rage, out of justice. She collapsed onto the couch, eyes wide in disbelief. "Don't you dare blame her," I growled. Stephen bolted for the door. I caught him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "You laid hands on my daughter." "It wasn't me, it was them. They work for you." He whimpered. I didn't stop. Knee to his stomach, then a boot to the ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. "Stop," Clara screamed. "You're going to kill him." "No," I said, voice ice, "not yet." I grabbed a fistful of Stephen's hair and pulled his face up. "Your men left my daughter crying in her own blood. Think I'm letting that slide?" Then I made him feel it. Not rage, just cold, calculated pain. I wanted him to remember every second. By the time I let go, Stephen was curled on the floor, sobbing, bleeding, begging. The same carpet we picked out together last fall, stained red. I turned to Clara. She was shaking. Her mascara was smeared, her blouse torn. "Tommy, please," she whispered. "I didn't want this." "Don't call me that." She flinched. "Get your things. You've got 10 minutes. If you're still here after that, I'll throw you out myself." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Ask your partner," I sneered. "Once he can stand again." The bodyguards were still breathing. One groaning, the other unconscious. I pointed to them. "Take your boss. Leave. If I see you near this house again, I won't stop next time." The one who could still walk nodded, shaking. They dragged Stephen between them like a rag doll. Clara hesitated. I turned my back on her. That was answer enough. The door slammed. The music had stopped long ago. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. I looked around the living room. Cigarette burns on the table. Blood on the floor. Glass from a broken frame under my boots. They desecrated my home. But it wasn't over. This was just the first punch. As I was cleaning the mess, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Found something. Meet me tonight." I wiped the blood from my knuckles. They thought this was finished. They were wrong. Episode 4, Digging Up the Truth. The sun had already dipped below the horizon by the time I pulled into the gravel lot behind the old warehouse. Marcus was waiting, leaning against his black SUV, arms crossed the glow from a cigarette outlining the edge of his jaw. I killed the engine, stepped out, and nodded once. "What have you got?" I asked. Marcus dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot, and opened the back of his truck. Inside was a laptop, two folders, and something wrapped in a red cloth. He didn't speak at first, just handed me one of the folders. "Start here," he said. "Timeline, names, accounts." I flipped it open. Bank statements, property records, wire transfers to accounts in the Caymans. Shell companies traced back to a string of P.O. boxes across 5 states. The accounts weren't just in Stephen's name. Clara's name showed up too, over and over again. "What the hell is this?" I muttered. She wasn't just playing house with the guy, Marcus said. She was helping him run the whole operation. I stared at the list of companies, trying to make sense of it. They looked legitimate on the surface: real estate development firms, investment LLCs. But Marcus had already dug deeper. "They're fronts," he continued. "Fake deals, fake clients. They use them to clean dirty money." "For who?" I asked. He didn't answer. Just passed me the second folder. Inside were photos, low-res surveillance images, timestamps, faces circled in red. I recognized one face immediately. Judge Michael Rourke, local circuit court, someone who'd dismissed half a dozen charges against Stephen's associates over the past year. Another face, Eddie Vallow, known mob enforcer from Chicago. I remembered his name from years back. He'd vanished after a weapons trafficking trial got thrown out on a technicality. Clara had met with both of them, not once, repeatedly. Marcus leaned closer. "They weren't just setting you up to take the fall. They were building an exit strategy, one where you're bankrupt, discredited, and probably behind bars. Meanwhile, they disappear with millions and leave you holding the bag." I stared at the photos again. One of them showed Clara shaking hands with Vallow in a downtown Denver parking garage. "She's been planning this," I said quietly. "For a while," Marcus nodded. "My guess a year, maybe more." I clenched the folder. It wasn't even the money that hit the hardest. It was the realization that for God knows how long she'd been looking me in the eye, sleeping in the same bed, while planning to dismantle the life we built together. "You find out where the money's going." Marcus clicked into a spreadsheet on the laptop. 4 offshore accounts, all under shell identities tied to addresses in Belize and Hong Kong. They're clean on the surface, but I traced the origination back to Clara's bank credentials. She masked it, but not well enough. I looked at the totals, over $2.8 million, all siphoned from savings accounts, investment portfolios, and the company's reserve. They hadn't just been aiming to escape. They were planning to leave me in ruins. I took a few steps away from the truck, trying to quiet the thudding in my chest. The warehouse lights buzzed above us. Across the street, a freight train rolled slowly by its rhythm, matching the storm brewing in my chest. "They touched Lily," I said, voice low. "She wasn't supposed to be part of it, but they let her get hurt. And Clara. She watched it happen. She watched Marcus." "I know," he said. I turned back to him. "And Stephen, he's just the tip of it, isn't he?" Marcus nodded. "There's more. I've got Eli digging into the digital trail. There's talk that Stephen owes money, big money, to the wrong kind of people. That's probably why they sped up their timeline. Your assets were the parachute. They weren't just cheating. They were selling me off piece by piece." Marcus reached into the red cloth and unwrapped something. "My old Navy sidearm. I figured you might want this back," he said. I stared at it, held it in my hands for a long moment, then nodded. "I'm not going to shoot anyone," I said. Marcus gave me a dry look. "Never said you would. But if it comes to that..." He nodded again. Back at home, the house was quiet. The broken frame had been swept up, the bloodstains mostly scrubbed, but it still smelled like betrayal. I walked into Clara's office, the one she always insisted on keeping private. She claimed it was for her part-time real estate work. I'd never asked questions, but tonight I opened every drawer and found answers. Hidden beneath folders of listing paperwork were burner phones, receipts from luxury hotels I'd never visited, appointment cards for meetings in Chicago, even a key to a downtown condo I'd never heard of. On her laptop, I found spreadsheets that mirrored Marcus's files, copies of transaction logs, outlines for property development plans that were clearly fake. One file caught my eye, Plan C. It laid out every step from the withdrawal of funds to a shell corporation in Stephen's name, to a delayed filing for divorce, to fabricated claims of emotional abuse to secure the house and settlement. She'd anticipated every move, even painted me as the villain just in case. Except for one thing. Lily wasn't supposed to be home that night. They didn't plan for that. And that mistake, that was going to cost them everything. Episode 5. Justice isn't just a word. The next morning, I drove to the Jefferson County Justice Complex, not because I wanted to talk to anyone in particular, but because I needed information, and I needed to know who I could still trust. Detective Carla Ortiz was leaning over her desk when I walked in. Short-cropped black hair, no makeup, and a stare that could cut through drywall. We'd crossed paths a few years ago when I testified in a workplace assault case. She remembered me. "You look like hell," she said, motioning me into the chair across from her desk. "Appreciate the honesty," I replied. "What's going on, Miller?" I handed her a thumb drive. "This is everything I've got so far. Bank records, surveillance. Clara and Stephen, they're part of something a lot bigger." She plugged it in and scanned the folders. After 5 minutes of silence, she leaned back. "You realize if even half of this is real, we're talking interstate fraud, racketeering, possible RICO charges. Is that a problem?" "No," she said, narrowing her eyes. "But it means this goes higher than me." I tapped the edge of her desk. "And I need someone who's not going to warn them the minute I walk out that door." She stared for a moment, weighing her options, then reached into her drawer and slid a sealed envelope across to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Unrelated. Found it this morning. Looks like someone's been paying off Judge Rourke. Big deposits, private accounts, all under the radar. Just thought you might want to see it." I took the envelope. "Unrelated, huh?" She said nothing, just offered a tight smile. Back in the truck, I called Marcus. "We've got a judge. Dirty and someone on the force who's still clean. Ortiz." "I'll keep digging," he replied. "Eli's in the wind right now. Found something he won't share over the phone. Wants to meet. Set it up." Then I called Eli myself. He was already 2 steps ahead. "You remember Julian Cross?" he asked. "No. He's Steven's digital cleaner. Guy used to be a black hat, now runs a security firm in Chicago. Only he doesn't really protect. He erases. What's he got to do with Clara? She's been emailing him, trying to cover her digital trail. Dummy accounts, VPNs, even tried to wipe your home IP address from a few datasets. And she's not as smart as she thinks. I mirrored everything before she could delete it. I've got backups on backups." "Good, keep it locked down." That afternoon, I went back to the hospital to visit Lily. Her room was quiet. She was sitting upright now, the swelling in her face fading. Still bruised, still tired, but stronger. "Hey, baby girl," I said. "Dad." She smiled faintly. I sat beside her and held her hand. The silence between us was calm, safe. She spoke first. "Mom called." I stiffened. "What did she say?" "That she didn't mean to hurt me. That she never wanted this to happen." I looked away, jaw tight. "She said it was my fault," Lily whispered. "That if I hadn't come home early, none of this would have happened." I stood, walked to the window. Needed to breathe before the anger turned sharp again. "None of this is your fault," I said quietly. "I should have told you earlier. I saw things, heard whispers, the late-night calls, the sudden meetings. I didn't want to believe it." "You shouldn't have had to," I told her. A knock on the door interrupted us. It was a nurse with a clipboard. "Sorry to disturb. We need to update the injury documentation for the official report." I nodded, stood to the side. As they photographed her bruises and cleaned the scrapes, something clicked. This wasn't just evidence. It was ammunition. Proof of what Stephen's men had done. And Clara's silence. When they left, I turned to Lily. "You're going to stay with Sarah's family for a few days, just until I finish dealing with this. You're not going to do anything stupid, right?" I gave her a half smile, no promises. Later that night, Marcus texted, "Meet midnight, Old Foundry." I arrived early. Eli was already there, sitting on the hood of his sedan hoodie up tablet glowing in the dark. "You're going to want to see this," he said. He flipped the screen toward me. Wire transfers, flight logs, court documents. What am I looking at? Clara and Stephen were planning to leave the country. Tickets booked for this Friday. Private charter out of Scottsdale. Guess where? Panama? He nodded, and they had a suitcase full of burner IDs. "How do you know?" "Because I hacked the airline records and watched them upload the passenger manifest." I exhaled slowly. "That's not panic. That's a plan." "Exactly." Then Marcus stepped forward. "And here's the cherry on top," he said, handing me a printout. "Stephen's debt, nearly $1 million owed to a crew based out of Detroit. Real bad guys. Word is he's been defaulting on his payments. So he's got enemies on both sides." Marcus smiled. "He's running out of allies. So we push him off balance. Start the avalanche." "Already did," Eli added. "Leaked some fake documents to Julian. Let them think their accounts were exposed. They'll scramble." Back home, I sat at Clara's desk again. Opened her secret drawer. Found a burner phone. Scrolled through the last few texts. One stood out. "Stephen, it's almost done. He'll be out of the picture soon." They didn't just want to leave me. They wanted to erase me. I set the phone down. They thought I was weak, predictable, stuck in my routines. But they forgot one thing. I built routines for a living. Now I was going to dismantle theirs one screw at a time. Episode 6. Building the Strike. A week ago, I woke up every morning thinking the worst thing I had to deal with was a delay on a concrete shipment. Now I was pulling surveillance footage, plotting asset exposure, and coordinating with hackers, a cop, and an ex-soldier. Funny what betrayal does to a man. I met Marcus again that night at a dive bar just outside Monument, a quiet place with sticky floors and burnt popcorn smell, where no one asked questions. He was already seated at a booth in the corner, a glass of whiskey in front of him, and a pile of papers spread out like he was preparing for a courtroom. "These the hospital reports?" I asked, sliding into the booth. Marcus nodded. "Everything from Lily's scans to the x-rays. She had a hairline fracture in her right wrist, 2 bruised ribs, and a mild concussion." My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice even. "She's healing. She's tougher than most grown men I know." I nodded, took the stack, and tucked it into my jacket. I wasn't sure yet how I'd use it, but I knew it would matter, one way or another. Then he pulled out the second file. "Got those background checks you asked for." On top was Julian Cross, Stevens' tech guy. Clean-cut, Ivy League education. Used to work cybercrime for the government until he went private for the money, obviously. "He's the one who's been scrubbing their digital trail?" I asked. "Yeah, we're trying to, but Eli's better." Next, Stevens' former business partners, at least 3, had lost money. One had filed a lawsuit and mysteriously dropped it 2 weeks later. The pattern was obvious: threaten, manipulate, vanish. "He's been running a long con for years," Marcus said, "using charm and Clara's connections to build trust, then draining people dry." I took the papers, scanning quickly, and Clara helped set it up. She was more than his lover, she was his partner. Marcus gave a dry laugh. "Romantic, huh?" I left the bar with a mission in my head and a plan in my gut. This wasn't about getting revenge, it was about justice. And more than that, it was about control. Stephen's entire operation depended on one thing: silence. Silence from the victims. Silence from law enforcement. Silence from the people he stepped on. So I decided to break the silence. I spent the next 24 hours drafting letters. Anonymous packages, each one containing key information, fake investment records, fraudulent wiring instructions, copies of Clara's emails, Stephen's fake business licenses. Each envelope was tailored to a specific person, people I knew had been victims of their scams. Then I mailed them. 22 letters in total. To people who had lost their homes, their savings, their dignity because of Stephen. I didn't include my name. Didn't need to. All I had to do was light the fuse. Next came Judge Rourke. Carla Ortiz had handed me a thick file on him, but it was what Eli found that really mattered: videos. Surveillance footage of the judge leaving brothels, receiving cash-stuffed envelopes from Stephen's associates, and once receiving something that looked a hell of a lot like cocaine. I burned 3 copies, one for the state's bar association, one for a local reporter I trusted, and one for Rourke himself. I didn't sign that one either, just wrote "time's up." After that, I met with Marcus and Eli again, this time at a motel room we'd rented for these kinds of meetings. No cameras, no digital trace. Marcus unrolled a map across the table. "These are all the properties connected to Stephen's name. Shell companies on paper, but at least 3 are real buildings. The warehouse downtown, a strip mall on East Alameda, and a so-called real estate office that hasn't had a tenant in 6 months. What's the most vulnerable point?" I asked. "The warehouse. No activity, light security, and from what I can tell, it's being used to move money through physical shipments, not drugs documents. That's where we apply pressure." Eli handed me a burner phone. "This is going to be your new number. Don't use your regular one for anything connected to this." I nodded, pocketed the phone. Then Eli pulled up a screen on his tablet. Here's the best part. On it was Stephen's offshore account, the one they were using to hide the money. But now it was empty. "Where'd it go?" I asked. "Gone, redirected, all of it." To where? "To the warrants. Somewhere safe," Eli said. "Think of it as a digital vault. And let's just say, it's no longer theirs." I let that settle in. They'd bled me for nearly $3 million. Now I had it back. Better yet, they didn't even know it was missing yet. That night, Clara called again. I let it ring. The voicemail came through a few minutes later. I played it on speaker. "David, we need to talk. Things are falling apart. Steven's panicking. They froze one of the accounts. He says we need to leave. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear I didn't. I deleted it without flinching. The next morning I called Carla. Judge Rourke's going to fold, I told her. He's going to take a deal to avoid exposure. How do you know that? Mrs. Sirwin. Because I made sure of it. She was quiet. Then be careful, Miller. You're walking a line. I know exactly where the line is. Before the sun set, I sat down at my kitchen table, the one Claire and I used to share coffee over. Spread everything out, property documents, video screenshots, audio logs, bank records. It looked like a war room. Because it was. I wasn't just building a case. I was building collapse. And the foundation under their feet, I was about to tear it out. Episode 7, Let It Burn. It was 7:52 a.m. when the trap snapped shut. I was sitting in my truck across the street from a glass office building in downtown Denver, one of Steven's supposed investment firms. But the real purpose of this building was different. It was the gathering place for the people he'd defrauded, conned, and bled dry. They didn't know that not yet, but they would. I watched through binoculars as they arrived one by one. A middle-aged woman holding a folder thick with documents. A retired vet with a limp. A younger guy in a cheap suit who looked like he hadn't slept in days. 22 in total. All carrying receipts, legal forms, and printed out emails. All of them holding pieces of Steven's lie. They were here because I had mailed them the truth. Inside the lobby, a security guard tried to keep order, but the crowd was growing restless. I could feel the tension even from across the street, years of anger bubbling under the surface. I checked my phone. 9:03 a.m. Right on cue, a black Mercedes pulled into the underground parking lot. Steven stepped out, adjusting his tie like he was about to win an award. He didn't see them yet. I hit send on a group message to every news outlet in town. Mass financial fraud confrontation, 9:15 a.m., 1472 Larimer Street. Victims confronting investment scammer. Bring cameras. Then I placed one more call to Judge Rourke's secretary. Just letting you know, I said, the package on your boss's desk contains footage you'll want to see before today's docket. I hung up before she could ask questions. Inside the lobby, the mood shifted. Steven finally stepped off the elevator. He spotted the group and froze. You could almost see the color drain from his face. The shouting started. You stole from me. My husband lost everything. Give me back 10 years of my life. Papers were waved, fingers pointed. The security guard gave up and backed away. Steven turned, trying to retreat to the elevator, but the door had already closed. Too late. The news vans rolled up 5 minutes later, cameras in hand, microphones out. And there he was, the charming face of the scheme, now trapped in a sea of angry victims and flashbulbs. I left the scene before the cops showed up. I didn't need to be there. The story would tell itself. And it did. By noon, it was on every local news channel. Businessman exposed in fraud ring. Victims speak out. Clips of Steven trying to push through the crowd aired on repeat. His tie was crooked. His expression, desperation pure and unscripted. Then came the police footage. Carla Ortiz standing at the edge of the chaos, presenting a search warrant to the building's manager. Steven was placed in cuffs. They didn't even give him time to call Clara. While he was getting fingerprinted, I placed a call to Eli. Start the second wave. He didn't ask what I meant. Minutes later, the IRS received an anonymous tip with bank routing numbers, account transfers, and photos of Steven's offshore funds. Steven's financial empire began to unravel like a pulled thread. By the time he was released on bail 5 hours later, half his accounts were frozen and his business licenses revoked. That night, he called Clara from a burner number. She answered. I told you not to panic, she hissed. The money's gone, he snapped. Every account. Someone took it all. Don't call this number again, she said, and hung up. She didn't know I was listening. The phone she used was cloned days ago. Now I had recordings of her plotting escape, blaming Lily for ruining the plan, and saying, quote, if Dave disappears, it'll be clean. He's got no one left. Clean font Sherwin. She wanted it clean. That evening, I met Baglio, the last standing bodyguard from the night Lily was attacked. We met at an empty construction site just after dark. He thought we were negotiating. He thought wrong. I wired a mic into my jacket and let the recorder run. For 45 minutes, he spilled everything. How he was paid cash by Steven. How Clara insisted I wouldn't be a problem. How they were told to intimidate, not kill, unless it came to that. I said nothing, just let him talk. When he was done, I handed him an envelope. Plane ticket, Miami, cash, a way out. He looked at me confused. I don't want to see your face again, I said. But if anything happens to my daughter, that recording goes straight to the feds and the mob. His face went pale. He took the envelope and left without another word. I sent copies of the audio to Carla to Eli into a hidden digital vault. This was my insurance. The next morning I received a voicemail from Clara. "You've made your point," she said, voice trembling. "Everything's gone. They froze my accounts. Stephen won't talk to me. I'm living out of a motel off I-25. Are you happy now?" I didn't reply. Stephen was arrested again 2 days later, this time by federal agents. Fraud, tax, evasion, conspiracy. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He just looked tired, hollow, exactly how I wanted him. That night, as the city slept, I walked into my garage. Clara's old belongings were still in boxes. She hadn't come to collect them. I opened one, found framed photos, expensive shoes, fake handbags. At the bottom was a monogrammed planner, her initials etched in gold. I opened it. Inside were handwritten notes, meeting dates with Stephen, bank transfer dates, notations like "get copies of Dave's signature and move IRA balance to Shell by Friday." She never expected me to see this. Too bad. I lit it on fire and watched it burn to ash in my driveway. Letting go. No, this wasn't about letting go. This was about watching them lose everything just like they planned for me. And I was only halfway done. Episode 8. The Fall of the Kingpin. I got the message just after sunrise. "Marcus, he's running." Stephen had skipped his arraignment hearing. Just didn't show. His lawyer claimed medical emergency, but Carla confirmed there were no records at any local hospitals. The reality was simpler. He was bolting before the feds took everything. That told me one thing: he didn't trust his connections anymore. That meant our plan was working. I sat at the edge of my bed, fully dressed, watching the sunlight crawl across the hardwood. Next to me was the last photo we'd taken as a family, a Christmas from 4 years back. Clara, Lily, me, and Stephen standing behind the tree like we actually liked each other. I picked it up, snapped it in half, and threw it in the trash. Time to end this. The final trap was set for an abandoned warehouse down in the industrial corridor just east of Commerce City. One of Stephen's old laundering spots registered under a shell company, long inactive on paper, but still active underground. I pulled in around 7:00 p.m., parked 2 blocks away, and walked the rest of the distance on foot. Cargo trains rumbled in the distance. No streetlights, just the buzzing of insects and the hum of danger in the air. By 7:20, a black SUV rolled up to the loading dock. 2 men got out. First, Castano family soldiers hired muscle from Chicago. Then came Stephen, sloppier than I'd ever seen him, wrinkled suit, wild eyes, carrying a briefcase like it might save his life. I watched from the shadows. "You got the money?" one of the soldiers asked. Stephen stuttered. Yeah, it's all there." The taller one opened the briefcase. Empty. His voice dropped. "Where is the money?" "I swear it was there yesterday. Someone must have..." Before he could finish, I stepped out of the dark and held up a USB stick. "Looking for this." Stephen spun around, eyes wide. "You?" "That's right. And you should have left town when you had the chance." The soldiers turned toward me. Weapons visible but not drawn. "Who is this?" the shorter one asked. "He's nobody," Stephen said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Just a contractor. A damn builder. Builder who just ruined your whole operation," I said calmly. I tossed the USB stick. The tall one caught it, plugged it into a laptop in the SUV. What he saw must have hit like a bullet. Offshore transfers, evidence of double books, duplicate payments to both the Castano family and external buyers. I'd exposed Stephen for what he really was, a two-faced, reckless liability. "You've been skimming," the soldier growled. Stephen backed away. "No, it wasn't me, I swear." I shrugged. "Maybe it was Clara." "She didn't touch your cut," he shouted. "She was only moving my part, I swear it." "Wrong answer." The tall one drew his weapon silencer already attached. Wait, Stephen screamed. "I have names, judges, cops, everyone. Don't kill me, I can give you everything." The first shot was muffled, precise. The second one unnecessary. Stephen collapsed lifeless on the warehouse floor. I didn't flinch, just turned and walked away as they dragged his body into the shadows. I made one anonymous call to a contact at the Denver PD. "You'll find a body at 1320 Emerson Industrial. Looks like a mob hit." Hung up before he asked questions. That night, Clara tried calling again. I answered. "It's over," I said before she could speak. She paused. "Stevens." "Gone." Silence. "I didn't mean for this," she whispered. "I thought he could protect me." "You thought he could replace me?" I was scared. "No, Clara, you were greedy. I lost everything." "You chose this path," I said coldly. "Now walk it alone." I hung up. But I wasn't done with her just yet. I drove to the rundown motel she'd been hiding in room 1 of 14. Knocked twice. She opened the door in a t-shirt, eyes puffy from crying. Here, I said, handing her an envelope. She looked inside. Divorce papers. Signed, filed, finalized. Along with a second set of documents, all the evidence of her involvement in the fraud. Her face turned white. You can't prove anything. I don't have to, I said. But if you ever come near Lily again, if I so much as see your name on her caller ID, I'll walk into the U.S. Attorney's office with this packet myself. Tears welled in her eyes. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Somewhere that doesn't have extradition. Then I left her standing in the hallway holding the ashes of her empire. Back home, the house was quiet. Lily was still staying with Sarah's family. But the silence felt different now, not heavy with betrayal, just empty. Cleared, like a house that's been fumigated. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Torres is flipping, he said. He's cutting a deal to avoid prison, giving them everything. Good. IRS is freezing the last of Stephen's assets. Judge Rourke just resigned. I leaned back in my chair. Then it's done. Yeah, Dave, Marcus said. You did it. But I didn't smile. Because this wasn't victory. It was just the end of the infection. What came next was rebuilding. Lily's trust. My life. Maybe something better. Something I could finally believe in again. But for now, to renounce, I was going to rest. The war was over. And I had made damn sure that no one, not Clara, not Stephen, not their twisted network, would ever hurt my daughter again. Episode 9. The morning after. The kitchen was quiet the next morning, sunlight drifting lazily through the blinds like nothing had happened. The headlines, though, they told a different story. Multi-million-dollar fraud, ring exposed, local businessman found dead in suspected mob retaliation. Below that, authorities investigating links between Judge Rourke, real estate schemes, and Castano family connections. I sipped my coffee, real coffee this time, not burned. For once, it tasted like control. My phone buzzed. Marcus, everything's unraveling. IRS has launched full audits. Eli scrubbed RN. We're clean. Carla Rourke cracked. Named every dirty player he dealt with in the last 10 years. DA's office is about to explode. I let it all settle in. Not with joy, not with pride, but with finality. What we built, Marcus, Eli, Carla, and me, wasn't just revenge. It was justice in slow motion. A methodical takedown. One that left no trace of emotion, just facts, evidence, leverage. The doorbell rang. I opened it to see Lily standing on the porch, small overnight bag in hand. She looked tired but better, stronger. Hey, Dad. Hey, baby girl. I stepped aside and let her in. The air shifted like something sacred had returned. She looked around. Doesn't smell like smoke anymore. Had time to air things out. We sat in the kitchen. She stared at her mug of tea for a moment, then spoke. I saw the news. I nodded, I figured. Was that you? I paused. She met my eyes. I don't want the details, she said. I just needed to know if it was you who made sure they paid for what they did to me. I didn't speak, just gave her a look. She nodded. Okay. That was all she needed. She pulled out her phone and showed me a message from Clara. Your mother's trying again, I asked. Lily scrolled through it. Apologies, explanations, claims of innocence, some twisted version of regret. She says she's in Florida now, Lily said. Some man took her in, says she's trying to find peace. Did you answer? She shook her head, blocked her. I gave her a slow nod. Good. There were no apologies strong enough to cover what Clara had done. Some betrayals carved so deep there's nothing left to salvage. And my daughter knew that now too. That afternoon I met Marcus downtown, not in a bar this time, but at a quiet cafe. He looked better, relaxed. No more secret meetings. No more burner phones. How's it feel, he asked. Like breathing air I forgot existed. He raised an eyebrow. You sure it's over? I'm sure enough. He passed me a file, final update. Inside were the last loose ends. Clara relocated to Florida, living with a retired pharmacist. No digital activity that hinted at revenge or return. Julian Cross arrested by the feds on unrelated charges, wire fraud and tax evasion. Judge Rourke stripped of his license, cooperating fully. The Castano family now under FBI investigation. Internal shakeups underway. Likely won't touch me or Lily, not after how Stephen screwed them. Everyone who needed to fall has fallen, Marcus said. I closed the file. Good. Lily came home that evening officially this time. We grilled steak, sat out on the back patio, and for a few hours life felt right. She was laughing again. That soft kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. I grilled her about school. She teased me about my old man grilling techniques. There was no talk of Clara, no mention of Stephen. Just us. The next morning I got a text from Carla. Torres flipped. He's named 2 more judges, 1 state rep, and 6 shell companies tied to Clara's deal. What do you want me to do with that info? I replied. Nothing. Just thought you'd like to know they're still falling. I smiled quietly alone. Sometimes you don't need to swing the hammer. You just let gravity do the job. I spent the rest of the day cleaning out the garage. Not because it was dirty, but because I needed the symbolism. I boxed up the last of Clara's old things. Photos, clothes, random knickknacks she insisted on keeping. Everything went into storage bins, which I hauled into the back of my truck. Drove them out to a donation center. Left them there, no note, no explanation. She'd already taken enough. Back at home, I opened the safe in the hallway closet. Inside were 3 things. A hard drive encrypted containing every piece of evidence, every recording, every financial document we'd used in the takedown. My sidearm cleaned, locked and ready. A single photograph Lily at age 8 holding a sign that said, "Best Dad Ever." I left the gun, kept the photo, locked it all away again, just in case. That night, Lily asked me a question while we were finishing dinner. What happens now? I looked around the room, the same one where Clara had laughed with Stephen. The same walls that had heard Lily cry. The same floor I'd scrubbed blood out of with my bare hands. I said, now we rebuild, 1 board at a time. She nodded. Can we start with the garden? I laughed. You planning on pulling weeds or just pointing? She smiled. Delegating. It's what lawyers do. Later that evening, I walked out into the yard, looked up at the stars. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the fire I'd set under every person who thought they could destroy what I'd built. They thought I'd fold. They forgot who I was. Now they were dust. And I was still standing. So was Lily. And no one would ever touch her again. Episode 10. Foundations rebuilt 5 years can pass in the blink of an eye when you're busy rebuilding your life from rubble. Walker and Miller Developments now takes up half a city block in downtown Colorado Springs, a gleaming glass structure where I spend my mornings reviewing site reports and my afternoons in planning meetings. But don't let the skyline fool you. This place didn't grow from ambition. It grew from anger. From the ashes Clara and Stephen left behind. I just poured concrete over the wreckage and built something stronger. It was a Tuesday when Lily walked into my office. Her long brown hair was pinned up sharpsuit jacket slung over one shoulder. She looked like a woman fully in command of her life, not someone who'd once been tossed down the stairs by her mother's thugs. Ready for lunch, old man? She asked, grinning. Always. I closed my laptop and stood nodding toward the framed law degree hanging near the door. Still looks good up there. She smiled, better knowing Stephen paid for it. Poetic justice. That degree wasn't cheap, but the millions Stephen tried to steal had been quietly rerouted, thanks to Eli's cyber expertise, and reinvested in our company and Lily's future, and in causes that mattered. No one ever traced it back, not really. We ate at a quiet restaurant. Lily liked one of those places where the waiters wear ties, but the steak still comes rare if you ask. As we sat down, she slid a folder across the table. What's this? I asked. Martinez case. Another slimeball using forged signatures to scam elderly vets out of their homes. I'm working with the DA's office. We're prosecuting. I flipped through it. Textbook fraud, doctored property documents, fake renovation loans, a trail of victims just like the ones Stephen once left behind. You're turning our story into your mission, I said. I figured someone ought to. I leaned back, pride swelling in my chest. You're dangerous in a courtroom. I learned from the best, she said, raising her glass. On the drive back, she turned to me at a red light. Mom tried reaching out again. I didn't answer immediately. New email address, she continued. Same empty apologies. Says she's found God and wants to make peace. I glanced at her. You believe her? She shook her head. Not even a little. Good. There was a time I tracked Clara's every move, her remarriage, her attempts to start over in Florida, her desperate letters to old contacts. But that time passed. Now I just check in once a year. Like reviewing security footage of a threat that no longer matters, but you still don't turn your back on. She's nobody to us now. Just a ghost with a history. That evening, we went to the park where Lily used to play as a kid. It looked different now. New equipment, fresh paint, clean sidewalks. Funded quietly by Walker and Miller through a donation labeled only as in honor of community resilience. She sat on the same bench where Clara once watched her swing. Only now Lily had a different glow about her. I've been thinking about James, she said. Your boyfriend. She laughed, my fiancé. I blinked. Didn't know you'd said yes. I hadn't. Not until this morning. I stayed quiet. He asked me again. Said he'd wait as long as it took. And I told him I needed your opinion first. I raised an eyebrow. He knows what I'm capable of. He does. And he still wants in. That told me plenty. James came to dinner that Sunday. He brought a bottle of top-shelf bourbon and didn't flinch when I asked hard questions. He had answers. Clean ones. No debts, no family scandals, no secrets. Just a good man who cared for my daughter and respected what she'd been through. I could live with that. Hell, I could trust that. As we shook hands, I gave him a simple nod. Welcome to the family. You screw it up, I know where to find you. He smiled nervously. Understood, sir. After he left, Lily hugged me. I know you don't show it much, she said, but thanks for being the kind of dad who stood up for me, who never let it go. I held her tighter. That's my job, and I'm not done yet. That night in my study, I reviewed our annual report. Our construction firm had expanded to 5 states. We'd broken ground on 3 new housing developments and donated to 6 nonprofits. We weren't just building homes anymore. We were building safety, trust, second chances. Things I used to think were gone forever. My phone buzzed. An encrypted message from Marcus. Clara's husband passed. She's in hospice care in Tampa now. Still no known contacts, no movement. I read it twice, then archived it. Let the dead stay buried. As I stood by the window looking out over the city I'd fought to protect, I realized something important. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something better. Legacy, honor, and a daughter who turned pain into purpose. The world could come for me again. But this time, I wouldn't be the one falling. Because I'd already learned the hardest way possible. You only rebuild stronger if you're willing to tear everything down first. Episode 11, Unfinished Wars. The construction site was quiet after dusk, just the hum of generators and the occasional bark of a foreman echoing down steel skeletons. I stood on the edge of the new housing project we launched with the DA's office and Carla Ortiz's task force. A women's shelter, secure, reinforced, anonymous. Exactly the kind of place Clara would have hated. That made it all the more fitting. Lily had pushed for it, said we needed to build something that wasn't just about profit, something that offered protection to people who didn't have a father with combat training and a war chest of blackmail material. She was right. As I watched the framing crew wrap up for the night, my phone buzzed. Eli, old file just surfaced. From Julian Cross's storage unit. Looks like Clara's handwriting. Want it scrubbed? I paused before answering. What's in it? Eli, financials. Letters. Enough to make noise if someone knew where to dig. I thought about it. Then type sanitize it. Seal it. If she ever tries anything, we let it breathe. Sometimes you don't bury your enemies. You just put a lid on the coffin and keep the shovel close. That night back at home, Lily joined me in the kitchen. Sarah asked me to be maid of honor. She said chopping onions like she'd been doing it for years. That's good, I replied. She was there when it counted. Yeah, she was the one who kept me calm when Mom's people started making threats. She reminded me I wasn't crazy, that you weren't the monster they tried to paint you as. I stirred the stew. I didn't know they got that far. Lily shrugged. You were too busy pulling the whole scheme down. I figured I could handle the fallout. I gave her a small smile. You're stronger than I ever was at your age. She wiped her hands on a towel. Maybe, or maybe I just had a hell of a teacher. After dinner, we took a walk through the park near our house. The one she'd played in as a kid. It was quiet now, families headed home, porch lights flickering on. You ever think about her, she asked suddenly. Your mom. She nodded. I thought for a moment. Not really, not in the way you mean. I monitor, I plan, I keep her boxed in. But thinking, wondering if she's okay? No. Me neither, Lily said, then paused. I think that's the saddest part. I don't miss her. I just remember her. That's enough. Later that evening, I got a call from James, her fiancé. He asked to meet at my office, alone. I half expected the worst. Some dramatic twist, second thoughts, or a confession. But he walked in clean-cut as ever, holding a manila envelope. I want to show you this, he said, laying it on my desk. Inside was a full breakdown of his finances, career history, even a psychological profile likely pulled from an old job screening. I know what Lily went through. I know how important trust is to her, he said. I don't want there to be a single doubt in your mind that I'm worthy of her. I studied him for a long time. Steady voice, straight posture, no fear, just quiet conviction. I appreciate this, I finally said, and so will she. He nodded. I know what happened to her. I can't undo it, but I can make damn sure she never feels that powerless again. I stood and offered my hand. He shook it. "Welcome to the family," I said. After he left, I pulled out a sealed envelope I kept in my bottom drawer. Inside, one last letter from Clara. Never opened. Never needed. I slipped it into the fireplace and lit a match. Watched it curl and blacken until it crumbled into ash. That was the final ghost. Gone. I slept well that night. No nightmares. No noise. Just a quiet house in the sense that finally the war was over. Not just the one in courtrooms and back alleys, but the one inside me. The one that whispered I'd failed. The one that said I should have seen the betrayal coming. That voice was quiet now. And in its place, a new one. Steady, focused. The voice of a man who survived the fire and built something from the ashes. Episode 12. Peace with Edges. 5 years ago, I buried the life I thought I'd have. Now I protect the one I built in its place, sharper, leaner, but finally at peace. My office top floor corner window overlooks 3 of our biggest developments. We've got sites in 5 states now, over 100 employees and contracts that keep coming in. But I still run it like a crew. No politics, no fluff. Everyone knows what matters: build strong, build smart, leave no weakness. Oh, same rules I live by. Lily came by just after lunch, crisp navy suit and heels, tapping across the hardwood. She didn't need to knock anymore. This place was half hers now anyway. "Got the Martinez verdict," she said, dropping a folder onto my desk. "I flipped it open 20 years without parole. Restitution approved." "Another one down," I said. "Another one who thought they could use fake documents and charm to steal homes from vets," she added. "Sound familiar." Starting to. Lily had taken everything she learned from what Clara and Stephen did to us and turned it into a career. She didn't chase criminals with guns, she chased them with court filings and subpoenas, and she was damn good at it. As we walked to the parking garage together, she mentioned something that stopped me cold. "James wants to talk to you about the wedding." "Trouble?" I asked. She shook her head. "He wants to do the traditional thing. Ask for your blessing. Walk me down the aisle with my birth father." I stopped walking. "You good with that?" I asked him. I told him if you weren't the one walking me, there wasn't going to be a wedding. That hit harder than I expected. "I'll be there," I said, with a clean suit and a concealed holster. She laughed. "He already knows." At the park that evening, we sat on a bench facing the new shelter. We helped fund the one Carla helped us design. Women walked in and out with kids in tow. Volunteers chatted near the entrance. A quiet fortress built on hard lessons. "You ever think we're the lucky ones?" Lily asked. "Lucky," I echoed. "Most people don't get justice. Most people don't get to fight back and win." I looked at her. "We didn't win by chance. We won because we knew what it cost." She nodded. "I still don't regret any of it." "Neither do I." My phone buzzed that night while I was reading the security brief from Eli's new firm. One new update: Julian Cross had been denied parole again. Still isolated, still silent. A footnote on a past that no longer scared me. Another ping came in: a background report on Clara. She'd remarried twice, both short-lived. Now living in a rented apartment in Jacksonville, working part-time at a thrift store. No criminal charges, no contacts, no relevance. I stared at her file for a few seconds, then deleted it. Let ghosts us stay dead. That weekend, James came by with a bottle of bourbon and a well-rehearsed speech. He'd printed out their wedding itinerary and even brought a pre-signed prenup. "You didn't need to go this far," I said, pouring 2 glasses. He shrugged. "It matters, not just to Lily, to you. I want to do this right." "Then here's what you need to know," I said, handing him a glass. "I've buried men who hurt my family, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon." He raised his glass. "Understood, sir." We drank. He was the right kind of man. Not perfect, but honest, disciplined, loyal. And if he ever slipped, he already knew what I was capable of. The night before the wedding, Lily came to my study. "You nervous?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "About letting me go." "You're not going anywhere. You're just adding someone to the team." She smiled. "He's earned his place." "He's still earning it, but yeah, I trust him." She came over and hugged me, arms tight around my back. "You're the reason I got through this, Dad." I said nothing, just held her. At the wedding, I walked her down the aisle in a tailored suit and polished boots. James was waiting, hands steady. Carla sat in the front row. Marcus nodded from the back. Eli was somewhere near the sound system, pretending he wasn't scanning the crowd. We'd all come out the other side of something dark. And here we were, whole. After the ceremony, I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. Sunset hit the mountains just right. Everything golden, everything clean. My phone buzzed, a notification from the security app. Routine check, no anomalies. Clara's name didn't appear. Julian's remained locked away. No new enemies, just peace. Sharp-edged, hard-earned peace. I took one last look at the mountains, tucked my phone away, and went back inside where my daughter was laughing, where our people were celebrating, where the war was finally over and the future finally ours.